It's the Sean Widmer Podcast. It's a journal by someone that just really doesn't like to write.
We have some housekeeping to do on the podcast today, a housekeeping episode. They're not always the favorite ones, but that's going to happen a little bit today. So we're going to start the show off with some housekeeping. I'm giving you a full warning on that. And then we're going to dive into me and Mother Nature. Mother Nature and me. Boy, I did that the wrong way. If you know me very well, what I just did is my least favorite thing people do. And I did it. And I don't do that a lot, but I was caught up in the moment of the podcast. You put the other item before yourself. Don't put yourself first. I can't believe it. That bothered. I want to restart the podcast, but I'm going to own it that I made that mistake. And now I reset the timer. Mother Nature and me. We're going to do a little story about that because I challenged her today, and we'll get into how that went. We're going to talk some sports at the end of the podcast because I've got an idea for a billionaire I want to throw out there. I need a billionaire to step up and do this. I'm sure there's some billionaires listening. And a TV show that has entered the house that I was not familiar with, that I bet a lot of you are familiar with. And I don't know if it's a good thing or not. So I'm going to need some opinions on that. We'll get into the comments, and the comments are about peeing. So we're going to get into those. And an amazing zoo comment from Kirsten. Kirsten, before we get into housekeeping, right before I recorded the podcast tonight, I saw that you're playing Final Fantasy XIV, my favorite video game of all time, and then I looked at my phone to see where my text message. I assumed I was busy tonight with the Dungeons & Dragons Tuesday night crew, and I assumed I had all these missed text messages about, can you jump on? Do you want to play? I'm back into Final Fantasy XIV, and I looked, and there was nothing. So I noticed. Know that it's noted, Curdy. Okay, housekeeping for the podcast. Let's do this real quick. It's uncomfortable. And so that's why I've been dilly-dallying talking about other things right now for the first couple minutes. But we will get into fun stuff in a bit. We started something today. We're going to start it on, I started it today. We're going to do this on the podcast now. I've never done this before, and it feels uncomfortable, but I've talked to enough people in the past 3 weeks who gave me guidance to do this. And I think it's something that I had wanted to do, and I just didn't do it because it seemed kind of lame, but we're doing it now. I've mentioned it before that there is, I think I mentioned it on Anna's episode on Monday, there is some cost that goes into running the podcast. There is some cost. And I've always thought of starting something that could help. If you like the podcast, you can help out a little bit with just the cost that I have to pay per month to run this thing. Because it's what I'm doing right now. Right now I'm not working, and that's not like a thing that's killing us right now. I mean, at some point I'm going to have to work again, but I'm with the kids a lot. And, paying, I always feel bad when the charge comes through for all the stuff that I do for getting the website and everything. And it comes through and I look at Anna like, yeah, there's money for me just to do the podcast. She's like, really? And so I'd love to help offset that with this. So we started a Patreon. I started a Patreon today. Patreon.com/Sean Widmer Podcast. I think I'll put the link in the description of the episode. And then it's over. The Patreon link is on my website, seanslife.com. SEANSLIFE.com. So what it is, and it's weird to talk about, but it's what's going on. If you like the pod and you want to help support it, you go there and you can make a monthly donation, and I think the levels are there. I know a lot of people do a Patreon. They offer amazing things for all the different tiers. I don't really have that available right now. I think at some point there will be. What I will say is if you do support the podcast, there is going to be bonus episodes that are long form episodes with guests, most of the time with guests, and those will be available to people who support the pod. They won't be as well. I know you're going to say that these podcasts are well thought out. There is, I have a rough outline a lot of the time with these. The ones that go up on Patreon are going to be a lot more freeform. They could go anywhere, who knows, and those will be available a couple times a month. I'm going to try to do at least 4 a month, but you'll get 3 to 4 at least, and then maybe some bonus ones in there on different stuff. It'll be a place for me to put, a video game podcast and movie review, sports stuff, just little things like that are more fine-tuned and niche will be available there. And then, of course, long-form talks with my friends and other people, and that's over on Patreon. So if you want to, and this is something I don't want to push it on people to be like, you have to do this. If you don't want to, please don't. Please don't. Again, this is just to kind of help offset the cost of me doing the podcast every month because there's some cost that goes into it, and I would love to not, while I'm not working at all, I would love to not make my wife look at that transaction and go, really, dude? Really? That's the hobby you've chosen to waste the money I worked on? for. So that's where we're at right now. That's me with the weird part. Very uncomfortable doing that. And I do have to say to Ian is the very first person to become a Patreon member. And he was the first person to do it today. And that I will never forget, Ian. That was extremely kind of you. And it meant a lot. That meant a lot, having some support there. I always appreciate you. And I always love that you interact in the comments. You know that to me is really cool. I love when people send in comments, questions, concerns, whatever it might be. I love that. And Ian's always on it with that. Thank you. I really appreciate it. So Ian gets the shout out for being the first Patreon member of the Sean Widmer podcast. Patreon.com/Sean Widmer podcast. It's funny because people have asked me over time, I've done this since 2004, and people will ask from time to time, or 2005, people will ask from time to time, how much money do you make on your podcast? And I've always said the same thing. And people will ask, I want to start a podcast. And I can tell with a lot of people when they ask it because they want to make a podcast that makes them money. And I always, if you're someone who's asking me and you listen, because you've got the message back, I don't do a podcast to make money. And that's not why I do I don't do this podcast to get rich or anything like that. I do it because I genuinely love this medium. I love it. I listen to podcasts all the time, and I wanted to make one to add to the big, huge collection of podcasts that hopefully brings some enjoyment to your day, a smile to your face. We've talked about this before, relatability, that maybe you're like, oh, yeah, that happens in my life too. That's good to know it happens somewhere else. I'm not alone in that. Whatever it might be, you can realize how dumb some people are, aka me. But I wanted to put something else out there into the world that I take so much from, the podcasting world. And so it's never been something to make money. I tell that to everyone. So I wanted to just be very transparent though with how this is going, where the money goes, what we're doing this for, to upgrade things. I'd love to at some point probably get some kind of green screen or something for behind me. I used to have one, lost it in one of the moves. Just little things to tweak. At some point, you put some money aside. I'd love to get some kind of camera that's better than me using my phone right now, and just kind of slowly upgrade what we're doing here with the podcast. Anyways, that's that. Thank you. I told you it's housekeeping to start. Not fun. Not a fun episode. If you're new to the podcast, you're probably not listening 7 minutes into it right now. You're going, I already tuned out. Let's do some fun stuff, shall we? Let's do it. I took on Mother Nature. Did I win? Maybe. We'll see. I wanted to do something with my daughter I thought would be kind of cool. And spring is here. Spring has sprung. We were at the grocery store the other day, and she was great. She was great in the grocery store. When she's great in the grocery store, when she's listening, she had a basket, and she was carrying it around, putting stuff in it. Very helpful. And I thought, you know what? This needs to be rewarded. Because it was just, I wanted to be able to do that since there was no complaining. There was no asking for anything. I thought this is a good time for me to step in and say, hey, you know what? You were great, and you're not always going to get a reward for that, but you didn't ask for anything the whole time and you didn't complain about anything. Here's a reward because I appreciate your attitude. And so as we're walking out, we passed by that big stand that has all the flower seeds and the little packets. And I thought, oh, that's it. Pink. One wall was just pink flowers. My daughter loves pink and she loves flowers. I thought we're going to get pink flowers and we're going to plant flowers and grow flowers. And it's a cool science experiment. It results in something that is her favorite color and one of her favorite things. This will be really cool. The people who owned our house before us had left a ton of these little planters of different sizes along the side of the house. When they left, I'd asked about a bunch of things, and the lady goes, "Do you want to keep them?" I was like, "Yeah, let's keep them. That'd be great." And so we did. So I've got all these little planters, and I came home. We had one of the little pots, and I thought we're going to put a flower or two in there, and we're going to grow them. Now I didn't really read what's happening on the side of the package. I don't do that. They're flowers. Flowers are everywhere. I tell Olivia, flowers are everywhere. Let's just dump these flowers. I'm going to punch a couple holes with my finger into the dirt. We're going to dump the seeds in there, and then we're going to cover it back up, and then I know it's going to rain here a little bit. The weather's kind of there. We're going to get some rain. We're going to get some sun. We're going to have flowers. It says 7 to 10 days. We're going to have flowers sprouting up out of the ground. Let's watch Mother Nature do her thing. Let's go, Olivia. Pink flowers on the way. So I'm excited about it. Very different than Stardew Valley, one of my favorite video games. When you plant crops, it does take 7, 8 days, but that maybe is 30 minutes of my actual time. A day in reality is 24 hours. It takes a very long time for a day to go by. And so then to wait 7 to 10 days. It's an eternity. I could beat Stardew Valley by the time it takes this stinking flower to bust out through the dirt. And so we go on our trip to Louisville, and I'm excited to get back because it's going to be day 6, I think it would have been, when we got back from Louisville. So we come back. It had rained a bunch over the weekend. I'm excited. I go back, and sure enough, there we go. This little flower pot has dirt halfway up it, and then the rest of it is just water. It has rained inside of it, filled this thing to the brim with water. There's no holes on the bottom of this pot to let the water drain out. We have flooded the dirt. So I'm like, well, that can't be that bad for it, right? And so dump the water out, and Olivia hasn't really asked about the flowers. And so I'm like, okay, well, we got some damage control here. I'm going to dump this out. We're still good. Let's go. It's going to be sunny a couple days. Nothing's happening. So I look at the packet, and it says on it, punch a little hole of 1.5 inches deep, put a seed in there, cover it up, and spread these things out. I made a hole and dumped 18 seeds in that thing. I dumped the whole bag pretty much into it. And I looked and I go, this is simple. Like, their flowers grow everywhere. There's flowers everywhere. If you're walking around, you just see flowers. This can't be that hard. I get it that they have these instructions on the back. Mother Nature doesn't have these instructions, and she's got flowers everywhere. So as I drove around Lexington today, I was determined to prove to myself that there's flowers everywhere. Do you want to know where there was flowers? Where they were planted appropriately. In a garden where they were planted and taken care of. And that's the only place I saw flowers. Suddenly the realization hit me today. Oh, they aren't just everywhere. There's not just tulips and daffodils and roses and daisies everywhere. They are in these gardens outside of homes. They're taking a lot of time and effort to love on these things. So I got kicked in the mouth by a science experiment gone wrong. My daughter hasn't remembered it yet. I think I've got to make a trip to the store tomorrow. I bring this up for all of you green thumbs out there. Any tips for this? Because now I'm looking. Now I'm realizing I need to follow the instructions. I need to follow the recipe for planting a flower, which seems like the easiest thing in the world. And I want to get this done because my daughter will come a knocking, and she's going to want to know what happened to her science experiment, her gift for being good in the grocery store. And I don't want to just tell her, I drowned it, didn't follow the instructions, and we're done with it. I want to at least have something for her. But I got kicked right in the mouth by Mother Nature. It is not just dump the seeds in, put them in a bucket, set the bucket in the back patio, and pray that 10 days later, you got flowers. I wish it was that easy. Look, next time I get one of those, I'm going to follow the instructions in one pot, and in the other, I'm just going to dump a bunch in. Because I'm out here to defeat science. I mentioned a TV show that's in our house. And I'd never seen it before. My daughter is now into it. And it is one that I don't think I was allowed to watch in my house. Tim and Les, a little bit stricter guidelines on some of the television my sister and I got to watch when we were little kids. Not really that strict. But a lot of the Nickelodeon shows we missed out on. A lot of the Nickelodeon cartoons because they were a little too zany for Tim and Les. A little too zany for Tim and Les. Probably good. I mean, whatever. We watched plenty of shows. My sister and I were not deprived of shows. Trust you me on that one. And a lot of times we were out and about running around. We weren't locked into the TV. We also lived in a foreign country, and the shows were in Spanish. So we weren't glued to television unless it was Super Sábado Sensacional. And during Super Sábado Sensacional, occasionally they would run some wrestling stuff I'd get excited about. They would have NBA Inside stuff dubbed over in Spanish. That was kind of cool. And maybe some weird game shows that were crazy. Supercrópolis, Como quieres tú feliz. I don't remember how the song goes. Anyways, great times. So we didn't do a whole lot of television. But my daughter has now stumbled into SpongeBob SquarePants, and I don't know jack about it. This is my first week in life at 42 years old with SpongeBob SquarePants. What the heck is that show? I wish my mom would call me tomorrow and say, you're still not allowed to watch it. What am I watching? That was a really popular show, right? I remember seeing a lot of SpongeBob SquarePants pajama pants around the world in the 2000s. That show's zany. It's wild. DuckTales, great cartoon. Amazing cartoon. Tailspin, amazing. Ridiculously good cartoon. Gummy Bears, oh my gosh, fantastic cartoon. Story, some jokes, some goofs. They're fun. You get 20 minutes of action adventure. G.I. Joe, great show. Ninja Turtles, great show. Darkwing Duck, great show. SpongeBob SquarePants is crazy person. That's the first show that I've watched as a cartoon that was meant for kids where I'm like, well, they're on drugs. The people who made it are on drugs, which I felt like is okay if you're watching a show for adults, but I don't get it. So I might be missing the boat on this, but my daughter thinks it is hilarious. Krusty Krab pizza is the pizza. That line has been sung in our house for at least an hour a day for the past week. It's insane. And now my son has heard the song enough. He wakes up and he looks at me and goes, "Dad, crab pizza." I'm like, "No, dude, we're not going downstairs to start the day and diving into 40 seconds of SpongeBob SquarePants singing a song about Krusty Krab pizza is the pizza, just so you can yell at the top of your lungs, a Krusty Krab." It's cute, but good Lord, SpongeBob, what are you doing? So I've been introduced to it. This is my first week with SpongeBob. You SpongeBob nuts out there. What do I need to just plow it through the weirdness where, I mean, his eyes getting bloodshot and popping out of his head, and it's weird, man. Buns, lots of buns. Plow through and give it a chance, or is this one that I need to pretend has gotten deleted from the internet so I can tell my daughter, I think SpongeBob has left. I think he retired from television, and he's actually at his house watching other shows. Would you like to watch the other shows that SpongeBob watches, like Blaze and Paw Patrol and MLB Baseball? Because that's what SpongeBob watches. He loves the NBA playoffs, Olivia. We should probably focus on watching those.
Kelly's, what are you into?
Speaking of the NBA, play-in starts real soon because college basketball is done. So now we're on to the NBA. I love the NBA. The NBA is my favorite. I'm real excited for the playoffs. This is not a conversation about the NBA. This is not a conversation about the national championship game that just happened where UConn absolutely worked over Purdue. And the highlight of the game was a Purdue guy slam dunking a nice little tip dunk out of nowhere. And that dunk should have won him player of the tournament by itself. It's not about that game and how much I think Dan Hurley's rad and I think UConn is rad. And I was very happy to see them win because I think they were really good for college basketball. Anyways, it's not about any of that stuff. I'm in the middle of something here in Lexington that is crazy to be a part of from this side in Lexington, inside the Lexington bubble of University of Kentucky basketball, with my knowledge of UK basketball being from the outside looking in. It's very fun to watch this because Coach Cal has left University of Kentucky. The vibe that I felt here is that everyone in the city was done with him. A lot of people really hated him, and then the rest of the people were just kind of over him. And you wouldn't run into people in town here. I didn't run into a single person who was like, yeah, he's great. I really like him. Everyone was over him in one way or another. So he leaves, and now there's an open coaching spot here at the University of Kentucky. And people here are, I've talked to a lot of different people, from my brother-in-laws to some of my other buddies. I've seen some random people on some of the local sports talk stuff here. And they're like posts on social media with people replying who live in Lexington, and it's chaos on who they think they can get. Now, from the outside perspective, I'll tell you, I always thought UK was the swaggiest college basketball job. They had Rick Pitino, who I thought had killer swag when I was young. And then they had Tubby Smith, who didn't really have the swag, but he wasn't there super long. They had Billy Gillespie, who obviously wasn't here very long at all. And then it was Coach Cal. The main guys I've known as the UK coaches are Rick Pitino, swagged out, and Coach Cal, swagged out. This is a swag job. So I'm real excited to see who they bring in because I just assume, as an outsider, this is the swaggiest job in America. And the rumor right now is that it's Scott Drew, who is the opposite of swag. He is swagless, the least amount of swag. I think he's a good coach. I'm sure he is. He won a national championship a few years ago. But I was so bummed because I moved to Lexington. I'm going to dive into some UK basketball. I'll always be a Zags fan. I'll always be an Eastern Washington fan. Those will be my schools forever. But I'm here in Lexington. I want to embrace UK. My son and my daughter are probably going to like that because that's what they're going to grow up around. And I just wanted to be excited about it. So I was excited about a new coach and the prospect of falling in love with the next swagged out coach. And the rumor is Scott Drew, and that is so disappointing. And I'm very sad about that. Anyways, all of that to say, here is my idea that I want to see happen. And it's going to revolve around the show Welcome to Wrexham, which if you haven't seen that show, you need to watch it. Rob McElhady, Ryan Reynolds buy a soccer team, a low-tier soccer team in England or in the UK, And their goal is to see how far, because of how soccer works there's all the different tiers. If you win, you move up, you get bumped up a league. And if you are terrible, you get bumped down a league at the end of the season. And they're trying to see how far they can get Wrexham to climb with fame and money and their money put into it, and paying for players that don't normally exist in this world, selling them on the fact that they're part of this experiment, they're part of this TV show, and it's very fun to watch. And my thought is, I'm ready for a billionaire to come out here, because one of the big conversations at UK is with NIL, which is the image and licensing deal, where players can get paid now to be collegiate athletes. They can get paid. I think it's great that they're getting paid. They make the schools a lot of money. They're working for the school. I think it's fair to get paid for work done. Do they get paid an absorbent amount? Yeah, but they're in a business that makes an absorbent amount of money off these kids. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. I don't want to get into NIL talk. I just want to talk about the fact that right now it's kind of the Wild West, and UK is worried, do they have enough NIL money? Arkansas, where Coach Cal went, has Walmart and Tyson Chicken to just pay out the buns. Shout out SpongeBob SquarePants for players. Here's what I want to see. Here's the show I want in America. Welcome to Wrexham America version. I need a billionaire like Mark Cuban, who I know listens, or another billionaire who just has some screw around money and wants to do something fun. I want them to take $50 million. And I want to see if with $50 million as a budget, you can pay for a celebrity, because I'd like the Rob McElhenney, Ryan Reynolds aspect of this. Get a celebrity to be part of this. The billionaire goes in for $49,900,000, and the actor, actress, the celebrity goes in for $100,000, and the show acts like they're in it for the same exact amount. Okay, so you $50 million. You're paying for camera crew, documentary crew. Obviously, the celebrity is going to be involved. This probably wants some money for it, and then you have whatever's left to pay for a player and pay players, because you can just pay them. It looks like what I've seen, a lot of these players, if they get to over $1 million, they are that's like a really high NIL. That's just from what I've been seeing for college basketball. I don't know all the ins and outs, but it looks like that's the case. I just want to know if with $50 million, you can build a roster at one of the smallest schools you can find in America and win a national championship, because I think that would be hilarious. So I'll say Eastern Washington, a school that I love. Cheney, Washington, 15 minutes outside of Spokane. Second biggest city in the state of Washington. Not a booming metropolis by any stretch of the imagination, but a city that I love, and a big enough city. Could you pay a roster of guys from the transfer portal or freshmen, a mix of both, big upcoming freshmen? Could you pay a big name coach to come out and in 1 or 2 years win a national championship at the smallest little school and hang a banner in the rafters? I think if you did this at a place like Pepperdine, which I understand isn't the smallest school, but I think it'd be fun there, in Malibu, the amount of celebrities you can try to get into the games. They already have Adam Sandler randomly walk into games there, but just get celebrities who are in the area to understand what's happening. They're going to watch guys who are the top talent in the nation, guys who are going to be in the NBA the following year, watch a coach that's great, and this little tiny gym, which shouldn't happen. But I think it'd be fun as a fun goof on how weird and cheesy the NIL is, and how Wild West it is, and how it is probably not the greatest thing in the world for the sport, because the NIL is proving schools like Kentucky, that legacy, that blue blood, that wanting to have the name on your jersey doesn't matter anymore to kids. I think it does a little more than a lot of people do, but for the most part, it looks like what matters is, can you pay me? Which I get, because I'm that way. As an adult, I'm that way. I can have all the loyalty in the world to something, but if someone else comes at me with a lot of money, I'm in. That's life. That's how it works. So I don't blame these kids for that. That's my idea, though. Billionaire, where are you at? Let's do it. Let's get this Welcome to Wrexham, the United States version, done. Let's get the tiny little school somewhere to get a big coach and a bunch of players who would never consider going there ever. But as part of this experiment, as part of this movie that is made about them, they make a lot of money, and this school wins a national championship. And then when everyone leaves, they're right back to 9 and 20 seasons, never making the tournament again. But in that one gym, they will forever have the big banner that says 2026 National Champion Eastern Washington Eagles. All right. Thank you for listening. Let's do the comments, shall we? We've got a bunch of them today because Anna was on Monday. People enjoy the Anna episode. We talked about how do you teach a boy to get potty trained. We had no problems with Olivia. We are struggling with figuring out where to start with Huck. Here's what we've got. Rick, I love Rick. Rick says, pee sitting with a bowl of warm water. So sit him down, put the hand in the bowl of warm water, let the little tinkle happen, and you're good to go. I love that, Rick. Okay, there's thought number one. This is from Mom 2bows59 on YouTube. Says, I taught my son to pee sitting on the toilet backwards. Then he saw Daddy and Grandpa and standing up, and he would not sit anymore. FYI, my sons both get super constipated as well. Never had a blowout with them either. Hey, it's terrible when their stomachs hurt. It's great when they don't. It is nice not to have it up the back. Olivia, up the back, on the clothes, burn everything. That's the worst. Okay, so thank you. Peeing on the toilet backwards. Let me see if we can find another one of the peeing ones. These are from the Spotify Spokecast. Brennan. Brennan's got a great thing going. Congratulations on doing what I could never do, winning from the Inlander. The Inlander also hates me, so I never had a chance to win. Even if I had had the best thing in whatever it was, I wronged somebody when I was doing my sports show back in the mid-2000s, and they've got it out for me ever since. So, sort of a shout out to the Inlander, but shout out to Brennan and Spokecast. He said, I taught Link to pee, Link's his son. I taught Link to pee standing up outside and transitioned him to the toilet. This was a big answer, by the way, Brennan. A lot of people with the messages to me to teach him outside, how it works, and then transition that inside. In fact, this one right here said, it was from Dylan. Dylan said, living in the country on property, we have always just let our son pee outside. Well, when we went through a phase a couple years ago where we had to tell him, remember, we have family coming over. You can't just drop your pants in front of everyone and pee. That's the thing, right? A couple years ago, we even caught him after church outside peeing in the grass. Talk about being embarrassed. Now at 6 years old, my wife makes him sit down and go if not, it's like a fire hose and the bathroom is covered in pee. Dylan, thank you. This is my wife's number one concern. She is a clean freak, and the idea of Huck just going in there and fire hosing the walls is a terrifying thought for her. So we're gonna start outside, and then we're gonna do the sit down thing until you're smart enough to handle the equipment. I'm telling you, as a boy, you're never smart enough to handle the equipment. Ian, let's get to Ian's. Ian, again, Patreon member number one. Means way more than you know. Way more than you know. Okay, Ian said this. Closest Waffle Houses. We talked about Waffle Houses, how I'd never been to one. He said closest Waffle Houses to Washington are in Colorado and Arizona. That's a far away. That's why I'd never been to one. And then he went on to say McDonald's has a higher concentration of syrup to water / club soda ratio. And so when the ice melts, the flavor stays, and it's patented by McDonald's. That's really interesting. That's why their soft drinks are always the best. Their Coke is the best Coke. Oh my gosh. A large Coke from McDonald's. Baby. Punch and roll instead of scratching is quieter. I forget what that was about, Ian. I remembered it earlier, and now I don't remember what it's about. Ian said truck stops have everything, including sit-down restaurants. Truck stops are baller. And polar bears, tigers, and pangolins all day. Fun fact, tigers are generally most active at dawn and dusk. Thank you, Ian. Good stuff. We will get into zoo talk here in just a second. I promise you that. Yvonne, she sent a message in. Yvonne also sent a really nice care package, a ton of candy. Thank you, Yvonne. And a bunch of sweet blankets she made. I thought she was just making one for Woods. She made a blanket for Woods. She made one for Huck to use in this stroller that he carries around all over the place. And then she made these blankets for Olivia's dolls, a blanket for Olivia's dolls. Then she made some coasters, all these cool blankets. We were excited about it because Woods would have this blanket. Yvonne, I got to tell you, they didn't make it past my daughter. We will eventually take Woods and give it to him. Right now, they live in my daughter's room. She's got every stuffed animal that's on her bed covered with one of the blankets, whether it's the coaster or the big blanket. they're on top of a stuffed animal all over her bed. It's the cutest thing. So thank you very much for those. That was a really, really sweet, nice gift. All right, let's get to the big one. Kirsten, who snubbed me on Final Fantasy XIV. She works at a zoo. We had zoo questions. Kirsten said this. At zoos, it's usually more concerning that the animals are pacing most of the day than just relaxing and resting. Most animals, especially cats, spend most of their days sleeping. Zoo animals are usually most active when they are first let out into the enclosures in the morning or before they are brought inside. Midday, most animals are less active just in general. Also, since zoo animals have a usually very routine structure about their day, zoo animals can be more dangerous than animals in their natural habitat in the wild. If something super novel, such as a human, enters the enclosure when they have never had access to humans without boundaries, such as safaris in the wild, they're much more interested and unpredictable. On the other hand, you form better bonds with animals, and especially in apes, if they ever get out, they usually just want to go back into their enclosure and are super confused. You didn't ask for this entire novel, but you never talk about zoos. So here you go. Kirsten, you are on the short list of people I want to call for the podcast. Again, we opened up the Patreon, and you can go to patreon.com/Sean Widmer podcast. Go to seanslife.com, and you can see the Patreon link there. And people who are subscribers at any of the tier levels, you're going to get extra podcasts like me talking about zoos with Kirsten for an exorbitantly, probably long amount of time. And that's going to be the kind of stuff you're going to find there. And then also you get to support the podcast. All right. Thank you so much for listening today. I appreciate it. I'm going to go play Helldivers. Later.